All right, welcome back to another Bootstrapper Live. Today we're going to be going through the Profit Flow Playbook. This is a profit sprint to be able to sprint to the end of an operational exit. In fact, your very first operational exit if you work all the way through all the modules that we're going to cover today. All right, so by the end of today, if you stick with us, this is going to be hopefully a tight 30-minute walkthrough, and then you're going to have another 30 minutes beyond to be able to actually do all the work and achieve this, and then you're going to put it to practice over the next 5 days. And if you do so, you will achieve your first, maybe your next, if you've already done this once, operational exit. And an operational exit means that everything, or specifically one thing, because strategy equals focus, and the goal is to focus on one thing right now. We're going to focus on one profit flow. We're going to take one thing that you're currently responsible for, something that you as an owner is living in your head, something that is probably dependent on you. It's probably something that may or may not be complex, but it's definitely something that needs to happen over and over and over again inside of your business. And if it doesn't, it creates a problem. And that problem is yours today. And we want to be able to get to a point where we can delegate that ownership, where it's owned, the outcome is owned by the business. And being owned by the business means somebody else inside of your business, because it's documented, so we can then delegate it and then ideally eventually automate it with AI. Somebody else or something else owns the outcome, owns the result in your business, and that person or thing is not you, which means that you are that much closer to having an actually truly ownable business, something that is an asset and not a job or a liability, right? And the goal today is to prove that this can happen to you, right? That you can actually identify one thing in your business and walk away with the ability to be able to delegate and elevate it to somebody else or something else where it doesn't fall on your plate. That is an operational exit. Doing it once allows us to do it again and again and again until all of our proven profitable processes, all of our profit flows are documented, delegated, and ideally automated, right? Which leaves us in a state of an ownable business, right? That's how we can achieve an operational exit, not just of one thing, but of ideally everything, which is what we want to achieve. That is the discipline of long-term equity management. Working towards this concept of achieving operational optionality, right? The freedom to decide, right, of who's doing what when, of achieving an operational exit, right? That's the goal here. That's what we're working towards. We're breaking this into a 2-part process, right? So today we're covering the 5 steps here, which is going to document your first profit flow. That's going to work you through the challenge of doing it once. And then the goal is to be able to elevate that and repeat it, and then continue the process of setting up your ownable OS. If you're inside the fellowship program, you're definitely working through this. And ideally, you're already paired up with somebody who is a long-term equity manager advising you on how to build durable equity, because your equity is always degrading. And the job to be done here is to apply this ownable principle, this methodology, to counteract that, to defend against the natural degradation of our equity over time, building a truly ownable business that is maintained and the value constantly, hopefully, knock on wood, increases. The 2 things that we want to cover before we get started in the ownable methodology, in the book Ownable, we cover these canons of these rules, these first principles that we always apply. In today's series, in this workshop, in this exercise, we want to make sure that we are tying into these 2. Back of our minds, sequence matters, right? So this is quite literally a profit flow. By definition, it flows from one thing to the next, right? It's a proven profitable process to achieve a desired outcome inside of our business, ideally owned by somebody other than ourselves, right? So sequence does matter. The other thing is there's no such thing as partial, right? In this model, in this mindset, in this method, partial does not exist. If it's partial, it is a no, right? The goal is to get it complete, right? So when we're working through a profit flow, the first thing that we need to decide is, what are we going to actually operationalize so that we can exit and achieve our first operational exit? What I want you to do is sit back and think through something that you're currently responsible for. And what we want to do is select, rank, and retrieve off of all of these things that we're responsible for. And we want to pick one thing, because again, the goal here is to achieve one operational exit We're going to document one profit flow. We're going to delegate one profit flow. We're going to track one profit flow, and we're going to exit from one profit flow in this challenge, in this 5-day challenge. And then we're going to do it again and again and again. And I want you to think through like maybe something that recently happened in your business that was a major mistake or a regret, right? So like if something happened that was bad, a mistake was made, that's a constraint. That's an operational gap in your business where a lot of value could be captured by creating a profit flow there, right? If you can't think of anything right now, like, payroll didn't get run or something, right? If you can't think of anything that was this, huge recent mistake that created a huge fire for you, then another way to rank and retrieve as you're choosing, a profit flow to kind of focus on, we typically like to follow the money. And follow the money would be like, think about your profit engine and how you're acquiring, activating, and ascending revenue through your business system. That's another way, right? So if you think about your value engine and it's the things that are being done to support the throughput of your business, think about a recent fire, think about something that happened or didn't happen, right? That created a problem for you. Great place to fill a gap. If you don't have one, focus on your profit engine because more revenue, profitable revenue is not a bad thing. And we could focus and pick there. But ideally, it's going to be recurring, right? So this is going to be something that you're consistently, responsible for. You want to remove it from your plate. It's going to create maximum amount of value. We want to document things that have to happen consistently. This isn't like a one-off checklist thing. These are proven profitable processes that make your business run, right? It should be important. So again, it should tie to your business running. And if it doesn't happen, your business is hurt because of that, right? So it needs to be important enough to be able to elevate in order to be able to delegate. Ideally, it's going to be annoying. It's something that you don't enjoy doing because we want to get rid of the tank emptiers, get rid of the things that are draining you of energy, and then keep the things that are tank fillers. This should be a tank emptier, and it's something that you are directly responsible for today because the goal here of this challenge is to get you to a operational exit so that you can validate for yourself that this stuff works. That's why we're doing this. That's why we do this the way that we are. So you could prove to yourself, do it for yourself, and then do it for others. Prove to yourself that it works, and then care enough to do it for everybody else inside of your business. So hopefully you're working through this. You pick that one thing. We're going to then get ready to actually get this done. The very first thing that you need to set up yourself for success is accountability, right? It's structure, strategy, and accountabilities to achieve simple, profitable outcomes. The accountability setup, this is taken into account that you're not doing it inside of bootstrapper.ai. If you are, we already set it up for you to be done successfully. But minimally, what you need to do is be able to create a container of accountability, right? So first thing would be like if you're in a Google Drive, you're creating a folder that's like an ownable folder, right? You want to name the specific people that are involved with this because you're delegating an owner to it, right? So you want to be able to tie it to a role inside of the business. You're going to know that you're going to have to run a retrospective because the goal here is to be able to document it, then delegate it, ideally over time automate it. But you're tracking it every single, you're benchmarking the results every single week through a weekly retrospective to make sure that when you're getting it off of your plate, it's still being done successfully and profitably for your business. It's achieving the outcomes desired. That's an action that needs to still be able to be set up to be able to achieve. So as we're doing this, you need to set it up for yourself. You need to be able to set it up for the system, and then you need to set it up for the person that you're doing it. And then you need to sign the operating rules, which is essentially, putting the name of accountability down. Then we get into the selection test, right? So first step is setup. If you're in the bootstrapper.ai software, that setup process is done in the build equity in your ownable OS page, where quite literally like all of this stuff is just done, point, click, simple for you. And if you're inside of the boot camp in the software, the activation, going through it, it's going to be, step by step to be able to have to do this. If you're not, this is, ideally for everybody else, right? Because we want to help all 36.2 million small businesses become ownable. Becoming ownable means that we're building assets, not liabilities, right? We're going to not only survive the great pivot that we're currently in, we're going to thrive within it, right? This stuff is important. So we want to make accessibility across the board. This is not just always intended for if you're inside of the platform, but if you are, we made it a lot easier and simple, because simple works. Simple is not always easy. We did the hard work to figure out how to make it simple. Just use it. Kind of easy, right? The selection test is what we just worked through on the previous slide, right? So you kind of already have this in your mind, but this is like a mental model to actually be able to make a good timely decision. So it's like happening more than once a month. That's a good candidate for yes for a profit flow. It will damage the business if it's ignored for more than 30 days. Like you're going to know, red flag, something's wrong. Good candidate for a profit flow. And it can be explained because it can be documented, so then it can be delegated, right? If this is like some secret special sauce in your that literally is the Coca-Cola recipe or something in your brain, not a good candidacy for a profit flow. These are going to be the things that you literally can let go of, and you should be letting go of, because it's building an asset for you every single time that you do, right? So work through the selection test, make sure you're picking the right things, and then we're going to get into the actual mechanics of documenting a profit flow. It's kind of simple. This stuff is pretty straightforward. If you need help, honestly, you have the long-term equity managers that are inside of the ecosystem, and you should, if you're part of the fellowship program, be tied to somebody who can work you through with accountability. You can always reach out and you can always get engaged through the community. But also, I mean, at this stage, we have AI, and like this stuff is not rocket science. Really, the hardest part of all of this is just doing it. It's like the boring work, like it just kind of needs to get done. And then it's really doing it in a cadence or in a container, right? Doing it in a place, a singular place where we're committed to doing it consistently, because the hardest part of all of this is consistency on a cadence, and tying a cadence to actual real accountability that actually creates true outcomes in a meaningful way for your business. That's what we designed with the ownable OS. Like it's really just a design. This stuff should not feel complicated if it's being done right? Like honestly, the simpler that this feels, the better it's going to be, because the more likely it's going to actually be done and adopted and used. And the goal here is like dead simple for you as an owner. Once you're doing this once, quite literally the end outcome should just be like a red, yellow, green visual of if things are happening good or not in your business, right? And you don't want this to be this extra job. This isn't like the job to do the job type of thing. It's definitely work to lay it down right now, and we're about to walk through how simple it can be. It shouldn't be too much work, but you do need to set it up. Again, if you need help implementing, we have Profit Flows as a service that we help folks do this stuff with if you need the help. But I mean, you got AI and stuff, just get it done, like work through it, get it done. Once it's done once and it's done right, it can be done repeatably and used, and then it becomes truly an asset. And this is how you build your business into an ownable asset. So the very first thing that you're going to be focusing on or writing down as you're working through. So we're going to work through documenting the mechanism. And then from documenting the mechanism, then you're going to be able to bring it over into how you delegate it and apply it. Documenting it is done in a sequence. So again, our non-refusals, sequence matters, right? So documenting is done in a sequence. And then from a design perspective, a design to delegate, how you set that up, if you want to use your own, Google Sheet or spreadsheet or whatever, or if you're actually inside of the bootstrapper.ai, which we've actually done this to be super simple, and there's a lot of intuitiveness that we built into it, right? The design for the delegation is going to be different than the way in which we document it for sequences. The first thing that we're going to talk about, though, is a trigger, right? So as these things are happening, there should be a trigger event, right? So in this example, first business day of the month at 9 a.m., that's the trigger. It's a time-based constrained trigger. You know when the thing is happening, right? So if you're working on a profit flow, you need to be able to identify the what, the when, right? The second thing that we want to be able to write down are the actual steps that we're going to be following to be able to achieve the job to be done, right? Or the outcome of the job to be done, right? These should be numbered. They should be sequential. You should be able to execute them with action verbs, right? And there shouldn't be, any need for verbal, like fillings of this stuff. Like less is more when it comes to the documentation of the steps. Think of it almost as like a checklist type basis, like quite literally turn the key of the, put the key in the door, turn the key, open the door, flip the sign, we're open, right? So this is step-based stuff. Where people tend to go wrong is they over document, right? This is like the moment in time to be bootstrapper cheap, right? Bootstrapper doesn't mean broke, but oftentimes it does mean we're doing things on a budget. You want to be on a budget when you're documenting your steps and your profit flows and your proven profitable processes, because the reality is like they are naturally going to change over time. These are guardrails more than anything, and they're really systems of accountability, right? To be able to facilitate within the guardrails. And there's no real benefit of taking and investing a ton of time, to something that may or may not be, you read consistently. And let's get realistic, right? We're setting up the guardrails here. So from just a tidbit perspective, don't go all in. This isn't like a document everything and write an essay about it. Less is more when you're setting up and documenting your profit flows. And step number 3 is the most important thing. It is the output or the outcome, right? So this is not tied to was it done or not. Like this is not activity based. This is quite literally like the outcome or the reason why we do the thing, what we expect from this profit flow being followed. And this needs to be tied to something that's meaningful and valuable to your business. This is a great way to also, which we're not going to cover in today's exercise, but as we're optimizing our businesses over time, because one of the ways in which we can improve unit economics of our business is to optimize our profit flows. And one of the ways in which we can optimize our profit flows is quite literally less is more. Sometimes it's better to just not do the thing and remove something if it's not necessary. And oftentimes that's great ways to increase margins, right, of everything. But again, that's a later conversation, which is one of the reasons why we want to do this very thoroughly, because it's an opportunity to always improve over time. But the outcome should be, the output should be meaningful, and it should matter to your business. Then we're going to get to a KPI. And from our KPI perspective, we want this to be binary. It's either met or it wasn't, right? This can't be a maybe or if. And the reason for that is because either it is done and it's good and it meets the objective of good, or it is not. If it is good, it is green in our system. And this is how we recommend you to set it up in your Google Sheet, or maybe you're adopting one of the Google Sheets that we provide, because again, we want everybody to do this. But honestly, if you're doing a Google Sheet, just let us know and we'll give you the software probably. All right. But the goal here is to set it up so that once it's done, it can actually be used. And the way that this gets used as an owner is to log in weekly into your retrospective and look at your ownable OS and see your engines, and quickly, with a quick glance, see green, ideally all greens, red, or yellow. And what we're seeing with green is that we hit this KPI. It's binary, it was achieved. If it's red, it means we did not. Problem. If it's yellow, it means we did not, but the person who you delegated ownership, which we're about to get to next, has a plan to get it green, is like aware of it, on top of it. And this is a very simple way that you can set up an accountability cadence in your business, especially if you're adopting the ownable methodology, where your business starts to run itself. And you as an owner can just stay aware of where your eyes need to be, right? So number 5 in terms of the process is actually ownership, right? So everything should have an owner at this stage. And you don't want to tie it to a person, right? Even though people have roles in our business, and you're likely going to want to tie it to a name of a person, because you're going to want to remind yourself, right? There's a good chance. But from a setup documentation perspective, we're tying it to a role, because these are people agnostic profit flows. They are tied to roles and responsibilities, right? So if we ever need to rehire, for example, it's not carrying forward with a person. This isn't tribal knowledge. This is documentation that's transferable, right? So we want to own this to a role. Also, the reality is as you probably feel every day in our businesses as small business owners, we wear many hats, and you may have, a name, but your name may be tied to different roles. You may have more than one role, right? So we want to have a role-based ownership of our profit flows. Next, we want to have backup. So if there's an issue with the owner, we always want to have a continuity plan, because the continuity plan is what provides peace of mind to us as an owner, that if God forbid something happens to a person who is in that role, there's always continuity in the business, that the thing that's mission critical that needs to be done, that if it's not done, it harms the business, can get done, right? So you always want to have a backup, right, tied to the profit flow, and then you always want to make sure that you're tying it to a frequency event, so that people know how often it's running, right? So that it's linked directly to a very specific, confirmed moment in time. And all of this stuff starts to get onto a calendar cadence. So this becomes a calendar cadence of accountability. It becomes the rhythm of accountability of execution of your business. This is what turns your business into something that other people start to take ownership of, because now they're empowered to do so. And there's a system in place to hold them accountable. So let's talk about the integrity test. The integrity test is, did we do a good job, right? So answer yes to all 5 before unlocking day 2, which is the next step. Again, partial does not count. So this is how we know whether or not we're ready to move forward from the work that we just did. Could a competent new hire run this without asking you a single time, right? So if it's clear of what they need to do and they don't need to come in and ask you, then we're good to go forward. Is the owner role a title and not a person? What we just talked about. If it's a title, good. If it's a person, go back. Is the KPI binary? Because again, we need to tie it to red, yellow, green, like we just covered. If it's not, if it's issues, then it's not complete. It's partial. Go back. Is this going to actually reduce your dependency, owner dependency? Like, meaning, is this going to get something that's meaningful off of your plate? If yes, move it forward. If no, go back. Is the next run of this profit flow confirmed on a calendar of when? So there's a trigger and there's a frequency, right? That we know it's going to happen. If no, go back. If yes, we can move it forward to day 2. And day 2 is the delegation, right? So now we've done the work, right? What we just finished in day 1 is the actual documentation of a proven profitable process that is now ready to be delegated, right? So first it's document it, because if you can do it, right? If you can do it, you can say it. If you can say it, you can document it. If you can document it, you can delegate it. And eventually where we're going to go with everything is, if you can delegate it, there's a really good chance in the future we're going to be able to automate it with AI, right? So the day number 2 is all about handing off. Handing off is a very scary thing. This is a scary moment in time. You're going to want to do it tight. You're going to keep brevity to it, and you are going to walk away clean, meaning you're not going to be a helicopter parent of this proven profitable process. Once you delegate it, you're going to not shadow run it. You're going to quite literally sever and step back completely, right? And you're going to communicate these words in the bracket. You're going to say, the next run of this profit flow belongs to you. I will not intervene unless the system breaks. Any questions, you go to the documentation first, right? If this is like a red flag fire and it needs to be addressed, you manage expectations that at that moment in time, you will get involved. But the reality here is you want to successfully delegate yourself out of it, and you need to let people experience it, and you need to let the system fail, right? If it's going to fail, you want it to fail in a controlled, contained manner. That's again why we're focusing one at a time, because when we do this in a one at a time perspective, it's like a simple bet experiment. It's controlled, it's contained. If there's risk, we can mitigate it, because day 3, we're going to observe from a distance, right? We're going to start to go in and we're going to say, hey, did this work? Did we meet the output that we wanted, right? Did we get to the goal? Was our KPI met? Binary, right? Is it green or is it red? Or ideally, you're starting to get to the conversation point where you're empowering people, because what we want to do is run a retrospective. So once we're measuring it, we then want to be able to make it matter, so that our data becomes something that's meaningful, that can actually improve the business. which is the art form of a retrospective, which is why in an ownable cadence inside of your ownable methodology, when you're running an ownable operating system, you're running a weekly retrospective. It's really all about cadence of accountability, right? You're setting up your engines, you're setting up your OS, and you're delegating these profit flows so that every single week you can come in and just review the output of your business. And you're doing it tight enough where even though you're sometimes reactive in some things, it's tight enough of a loop that you can be proactive into many things. And it really turns your business into a machine that's running for you, into an asset in which you own. So the way that we're running retros in this situation, what happened, right? Did you do it correctly or not, right? Did the documentation actually help you? Did it steer you in the right direction? What was required of me? Was there any friction? Was there any moments where I had to step in and fill a gap, right? Was the standard actually met, red, yellow, green? If not, we go back to the drawing board because there's probably something wrong with the delegation, the documentation for the delegation. Uh, what is there a revision that needs to be made? And if there is, keep it constrained to one thing, right? So the goal in terms of our retrospective is to look at the process and to not look at the person. Again, you can control your process. You can't guarantee outcomes. The concept here is to be able to be in control of your process. You don't want to pass accountability. You don't want to pass um, concern or judgment onto the person. You want to improve the process, right? You want to get to a proven profitable process. So you want to set it where you have a limit, time constrained, in order to improve your profit flows. If you can't improve it in under 10 minutes, then there's a complexity issue and you got to simplify, right? Ideally, if you're constantly improving your profit flows, for example, this is a great art form of delegation. So once you do this once, you're doing it many times. Once you do it once, you continue to do it forever. We're doing it once right now at this stage and beyond, at the retrospective stage. If somebody is not hitting green and they're hitting red, you're showing them through this retrospective methodology how a person can take ownership of improving. So essentially, over time, even though you're in doing this and involved with it this time, over time, the way that this works is your people start to do this. And they're asking, like, how are we improving this profit flow if we didn't hit green? And this constraint becomes to do it so that you can keep it simple. And you're only focusing on a single revision. You're not doing total rewrites of a profit flow. You're focusing on a single revision that systematically over time optimizes, right? At this point, the challenge is now closed. You have now gone through the full process of of identifying something that you're responsible for, getting it out of your head, getting onto somebody else's ownership plate through successful documentation of a profit flow that you then successfully delegated, that then you did a successful retrospective with, and you were able to design an optimization for with constraints. And at this stage, you should be able to say, my business now owns this profit flow, right? If you're able to say that, you just achieved your first operational exit, right? Your business now owns one piece of execution without you, which means that you're starting to actually build the framework of a truly ownable business, something that is an asset, something that somebody else would want to buy, but you're probably never going to want to sell, right? And this is your first true structural win inside of your business. The reality is you've proven it to yourself you can do it. Now you start to see the value of doing it for others. And the addiction, the obsession becomes wanting to do it for your entire business across the board, right? Do it once and then repeat and continue to do it until it's completely done. That sets you up for the next thing that's coming inside of the activation, right? So if you're inside the fellowship, then you know, like, this is what's on the roadmap ahead. If you're not inside of the fellowship yet, you should join, right? So you're able to get access to Bootstrapper.ai software, which is quite literally the purpose-built software to do all of this stuff dead simple, so that it works for you and you don't have to necessarily do all of this work, right? It helps you get to an ownable business that's more valuable. By adopting the software and doing all of this stuff in the software, we're giving you a weekly valuation. We're benchmarking your equity. We're showing you how to improve your value of your business over time. We're showing you how to increase your risk and readiness score, which grows your equity. And because all of the information is in one central place, because you could do it in a Google Sheet or someplace else, you do it here because by doing it here, it means that you're also in a position to be capital ready. We're able to take all the information that you're documenting on a weekly basis. We feed it into capital packages that we can facilitate you for, which is a part of working through the entire fellowship as well. You're always capital ready. And you're capital ready because the goal here is to always be exit ready. An exit ready business, somebody who's worked through this, achieves the goal of exit 4, operational optionality and operational exit. An exit ready business is a capital ready business. An exit ready business is something that somebody else would want to buy. It's going to get you top value in the market. But the reality is it's an asset that you own and you're probably never going to want to sell because it's fun, it's enjoyable. You've done it and built it in a way where you're dealing with your tank fillers and your tank emptiers are delegated away. And you don't want to let that go. So that's what's coming here in terms of moving it forward. You're going to be able to identify your North Star, your binding constraints, and your cadence setup, which fully sets up your full ownable operating system. That's the session. You have the materials to be able to do all this stuff out. If you have any questions, you can always reach out. Until next time, trust the process, commit to the journey.